In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from Earth and its bustling colonies, the human vessel SS Horizon drifted silently through the endless void. The ship was not large or intimidating like the warships of old, nor was it sleek and fast like the smugglers' crafts that darted between star systems. Instead, it was built for exploration, a floating laboratory filled with sensors, probes, and equipment designed to study the mysteries of space. Its mission was simple: gather knowledge, chart unknown regions, and bring back data that might one day help humanity understand its place in the universe. Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed out at the swirling colors of a distant nebula. He was a calm man, with short brown hair streaked with gray, and a face lined by years of responsibility. Though he wasn't much for speeches, his crew trusted him completely. They knew he would do whatever it took to keep them safe. Around him, the bridge hummed with activity. Monitors blinked with streams of data, and officers moved between stations, their voices low but steady. At one of the consoles sat Lieutenant Elena Vega, her dark eyes scanning readouts faster than most people could follow. She was young, barely into her 30s, but already renowned for her sharp mind and relentless curiosity. Today, she had something unusual to share. Leaning forward, she tapped a few commands, bringing up an image on the main screen. It showed a faint shimmer in the fabric of space, almost invisible to the naked eye. "Captain," she said, turning to Ryan, "I think we found something interesting." Her tone was excited but measured, the way scientists often spoke when they didn't want to get ahead of themselves. "It's some kind of energy anomaly. I've never seen anything like it." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "What makes you say that?" "Well," Elena began, pointing to the readings, "it's emitting pulses of energy at irregular intervals. And look here." She zoomed in on part of the display. "The pattern doesn't match any known phenomenon. It's unique." The captain nodded slowly. Unique discoveries were what they lived for out here. But he also knew better than to let excitement cloud judgment. Space was unpredictable, and even the smallest detail could mean life or death. "Can we investigate further?" he asked. "We can try," Elena replied, "but we'll need to move closer. Right now, we're just outside its range." Ryan turned to Ensign Jason Cole, who was seated at the helm. "Jason, plot a course toward the anomaly. Take us in slowly. Let's see if we can learn more without getting ourselves into trouble." "Aye, sir," Jason responded, his fingers flying over the controls. The Horizon shifted direction, its engines humming softly as it approached the mysterious shimmer. No one noticed the shadow slipping into view behind them, a massive fleet emerging from hyperspace. As the crew focused on the anomaly, the Haelor Empire watched from afar. Their ships were enormous, bristling with weapons and glowing with menacing red lights. General Xylar, leader of the fleet, narrowed his cold, reptilian eyes as he studied the tiny human vessel. To him, it looked weak and insignificant, hardly worth his time. Yet orders were orders. The humans had ventured too close to Haelor territory, and trespassers were not tolerated. "Open a channel," Xylar commanded, his voice dripping with disdain. When the screen flickered to life, revealing Captain Carter and his crew, he wasted no time. "This is General Xylar of the Haelor Empire. You are in restricted space. Surrender your vessel immediately, or you will be destroyed." Ryan stiffened but kept his composure. "We mean no harm," he said firmly. "We're explorers, not invaders. If this area belongs to your empire, we'll leave peacefully." Xylar sneered. "You have 10 seconds to comply." Elena glanced nervously at Ryan. There was no way they could outrun such a powerful fleet. But before anyone could respond, the Haelors opened fire. Plasma torpedoes streaked across the void, forcing the Horizon to dodge desperately. The calm of moments ago was shattered, replaced by chaos and fear. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: the humans were about to face the fight of their lives. The first plasma torpedo exploded just meters away from the SS Horizon, sending shockwaves rippling through the ship. Alarms blared across the bridge, their shrill tones cutting through the tension like a knife. The crew scrambled to their stations, hands flying over controls as they tried to regain control of the situation. Captain Ryan Carter gripped the railing in front of him, his knuckles white, as he watched the Haelor fleet loom larger on the main screen. "Shields at 60%, shouted Ensign Jason Cole from the helm, his voice tight with urgency. "They're firing again." Ryan didn't hesitate. "Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of their line of fire." Jason's fingers danced over the console, and the horizon lurched sideways, narrowly avoiding another volley of torpedoes. The ship shuddered violently as debris from nearby space rocks was caught in the blast radius, pelting its hull. Despite its advanced sensors and research equipment, the Horizon was not built for combat. Its shields were designed to withstand micrometeoroids, not the raw firepower of an alien war fleet. Lieutenant Elena Vega clutched her seat as the ship rocked beneath her feet. Her mind raced, trying to process what was happening. She had spent years studying the cosmos, searching for answers to humanity's greatest questions. Now she found herself staring down the barrel of destruction, her life, and the lives of everyone aboard, hanging by a thread. "Captain," she called out, forcing herself to focus. "We need to do something. We can't keep running forever." Ryan nodded grimly. He knew she was right. The Haelors had them outnumbered and outgunned. Every second they stayed in this fight brought them closer to disaster. But surrender wasn't an option either. If they gave up now, the Haelors would likely destroy them anyway, or worse, take them prisoner. The humans had heard stories about the Empire's cruelty, and none of them wanted to find out if those tales were true. "Lucas," Ryan barked, turning to Chief Engineer Lucas Ford, who was already working furiously at his station. "How are the engines holding up?" Lucas wiped sweat from his brow. "They're still operational, but we've taken heavy damage. Another direct hit, and we could lose propulsion entirely." Ryan clenched his jaw. They needed a plan, something, anything, that might give them a fighting chance. His eyes darted around the bridge, landing on Elena. She was staring intently at her console, her fingers moving rapidly over the keys. Something about her expression told him she was onto something. "What is it?" he asked, stepping closer. Elena looked up, her face pale but determined. "Remember that energy anomaly I detected earlier? It's still close by. Maybe we can use it against them." Ryan frowned. "Use it how?" "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But it's emitting strange pulses of energy. If we can figure out how to amplify those pulses, we might be able to disrupt their systems, or at least buy ourselves some time." It was a long shot, but they didn't have many options left. Ryan glanced at the view screen, where the Haelor ships continued their relentless assault. Plasma bolts streaked past the horizon, each one missing by narrower margins. One wrong move, and they'd be finished. "All right," Ryan said finally. "Jason, keep us alive while Elena works on her idea. Lucas, see if you can reroute power from non-essential systems to the shields. Grace," he turned to Medical Officer Grace Bennett, who stood nearby. "Make sure everyone's ready for whatever comes next." Grace nodded sharply. "Understood, Captain." As the crew sprang into action, Elena dove deeper into her analysis of the anomaly. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to concentrate. This wasn't just about saving the ship anymore. It was about proving that humanity could stand up to even the most overwhelming odds. Somewhere in the chaos, she felt a spark of hope. The anomaly was unpredictable, yes, but so was humanity. And sometimes, unpredictability was enough to tip the scales. Outside, the Haelor fleet pressed forward, their weapons glowing ominously in the darkness. General Haelor sneered as he watched the tiny human vessel struggle to evade his attacks. To him, this was nothing more than a game, a demonstration of power. What he didn't realize was that games could be won by players who refused to follow the rules. The SS Horizon twisted and turned through the void, its engines straining under the pressure of Ensign Jason Cole's desperate maneuvers. Each evasive turn brought them closer to disaster, but somehow the small human vessel managed to stay one step ahead of the Haelor fleet's deadly plasma torpedoes. The crew worked in tense silence, their faces pale but resolute as they fought to keep the ship, and themselves, alive. On the bridge, Captain Ryan Carter gripped the railing tightly, his eyes glued to the view screen. The Haelor ships loomed large, their sleek, menacing forms glowing with an eerie red light. Despite their size and firepower, Ryan couldn't help but notice something odd about their movements. They weren't coordinating perfectly. It was almost as if they were overconfident, treating the humans like little more than pests to be swatted away. "Shields at 40%, Jason shouted, his voice cracking slightly. "We can't take much more of this." Ryan clenched his jaw. He knew they were running out of time. Without a miracle, the horizon would be nothing more than space debris within minutes. His gaze shifted to Lieutenant Elena Vega, who was hunched over her console, typing furiously. She had promised him a plan, but so far, all she'd given him was hope, and hope wasn't going to stop the Haelors from tearing them apart. "How's it coming?" Ryan asked, trying to keep his tone steady. Elena didn't look up. Her fingers flew across the keys as streams of data scrolled across her screen. "I'm close," she muttered. "If I can amplify the energy pulses from the anomaly, we might be able to create interference in their targeting systems. But I need more power." Ryan turned to Chief Engineer Lucas Ford, who was already halfway to her station. "Lucas, give her everything you've got. Divert power from non-essential systems if you have to." Lucas nodded grimly. "Aye, sir." He began rerouting energy, his hands moving quickly but carefully. The lights on the bridge dimmed slightly as power was siphoned away, leaving the room bathed in a faint amber glow. Meanwhile, Medical Officer Grace Bennett moved among the crew, checking for injuries and offering words of encouragement. Though she hadn't been trained for combat, her calm presence helped steady the nerves of those around her. When she reached Jason's side, she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're doing great," she said softly. "Just keep it up." Jason gave her a quick nod before refocusing on the controls. Another torpedo streaked past the ship, missing by mere meters. The impact shook the horizon, sending sparks flying from a nearby panel. Someone cursed loudly, but no one stopped working. Everyone knew that stopping meant death. Back at her station, Elena let out a frustrated groan. "It's not enough," she said, slamming her palm against the console. "The anomaly's energy is too weak. We need to get closer." Ryan hesitated. Moving closer to the anomaly meant getting even nearer to the Haelor fleet. It was risky, perhaps suicidal, but they didn't have a choice. "Jason," he ordered, "plot a course toward the anomaly. Take us in slow and steady." "Aye, sir," Jason replied, though his voice betrayed his unease. He adjusted the ship's trajectory, bringing them closer to the shimmering distortion in space. As they approached, the anomaly seemed to pulse brighter, its energy growing stronger with every passing second. General Haelor watched the horizon's movements with growing irritation. Why were these humans still fighting? Their ship was battered, their shields nearly gone, and yet they refused to surrender. It made no sense to him. Still, he dismissed them as insignificant. Let them play their games, he thought. In the end, they would fall just like everyone else. But as the horizon drew closer to the anomaly, something unexpected happened. A wave of energy rippled outward, disrupting the Haelor fleet's sensors and weapons systems. For a brief moment, chaos erupted among the alien ships. Torpedoes veered off course, and communication channels crackled with confusion. Elena's eyes widened as she saw the effect on her screen. "It's working," she exclaimed. "The anomaly's pulses are interfering with their systems." Ryan allowed himself a small smile. For the first time since the attack began, they had a chance, not just to survive, but to fight back. "Lucas," he said, turning to the engineer, "how much power do we have left?" Lucas glanced at his console. "Not much, sir. but enough for one big push. Ryan nodded. Then let's make it count. The SS Horizon trembled as another wave of energy pulsed outward from the anomaly, disrupting the Haelor fleet systems once again. For a brief moment, the relentless barrage of plasma torpedoes ceased, giving the crew a precious chance to catch their breath. On the bridge, Captain Ryan Carter seized the opportunity to rally his team. "Alina," he said firmly, stepping closer to her station. "How long can we keep this up?" Alina didn't look away from her console. Her fingers moved quickly over the keys as she analyzed the data streaming in. "The anomaly's pulses are irregular," she explained. "We might be able to trigger them manually if we channel enough power into it, but it's risky. If we overload the system, we could fry our own ship, or worse." Ryan nodded. Risky or not, they had no other choice. The Haelors were already recovering from the initial disruption, their weapon systems coming back online one by one. Another volley of torpedoes was inevitable, and when it came, they wouldn't survive without a plan. "Lucas," Ryan called out, turning to Chief Engineer Lucas Ford, who was still working furiously at his station. "Can you modify the engines to amplify the anomaly's energy?" Lucas wiped sweat from his brow and glanced at the readings on his screen. "It'll take some time," he admitted, "but I can try. We'll need to reroute more power from the shields, though." Ryan hesitated. Diverting power from the shields would leave them even more vulnerable than they already were, but staying on the defensive wasn't going to win this fight. They needed to act boldly, even if it meant taking a gamble. "Do it," Ryan ordered. "Jason, keep us steady while Lucas works. Grace." He turned to Medical Officer Grace Bennett. "Make sure everyone stays focused. We're going to need every ounce of strength for what's coming next." Grace nodded and moved through the bridge, checking on each crew member. Her calm demeanor helped ease the tension, even as sparks flew from damaged panels and alarms continued to blare. When she reached Alina's side, she placed a reassuring hand on the scientist's shoulder. "You've got this," Grace said softly. Alina gave her a quick nod, though her eyes remained glued to her screen. She knew the stakes. If they failed, the Horizon would be destroyed, and with it, any hope of humanity standing up to the Haelor Empire. But if they succeeded, they might just turn the tide of the battle. Back at his station, Lucas worked with incredible speed, rewiring circuits and rerouting power flows. His hands moved deftly, guided by years of experience and a deep understanding of the ship's systems. Despite the chaos around him, he stayed focused, knowing that their survival depended on his ability to adapt. Meanwhile, Ensign Jason Cole kept the Horizon steady, dodging stray shots from the Haelors as they regained control of their weapons. The enemy ships were closing in, their glowing red lights casting an ominous shadow over the battlefield. Jason gritted his teeth, pushing the engines to their limits. Every second counted. Finally, Lucas let out a triumphant shout. "I've done it," he announced. "The engines are synced with the anomaly. One more pulse should do it." Ryan wasted no time. "Alina, fire the pulse now." Alina took a deep breath and pressed the final sequence of commands. A surge of energy shot outward from the anomaly, creating a massive shockwave that rippled through space. The Haelor ships rocked violently as their systems were overwhelmed once again. Weapons went offline, shields flickered, and communication channels dissolved into static. For a moment, there was silence on the bridge of the Horizon. Then, slowly, cheers erupted from the crew. They had done it. They had struck back against the overwhelming force of the Haelor Empire. But Ryan didn't join in the celebration. He stared at the view screen, watching as the Haelor fleet struggled to recover. He knew this wasn't over. General Xylar wouldn't retreat easily, and the humans were still outnumbered and outgunned. "Stay ready," Ryan warned, his voice cutting through the noise. "This fight isn't finished yet." The crew quieted, returning to their stations with renewed determination. They had proven they could stand up to the Haelors. But the real battle was only beginning. The shockwave from the anomaly's pulse faded, leaving the battlefield eerily quiet. The Haelor fleet drifted in disarray, their once coordinated formation now a chaotic mess of disabled ships and flickering lights. On the bridge of the SS Horizon, the crew allowed themselves a brief moment of relief. They had done the impossible. They had fought back against the mighty Haelor Empire and lived to tell the tale. But Captain Ryan Carter wasn't celebrating. His sharp eyes scanned the view screen, watching for any sign of movement from the enemy. He knew better than to trust appearances. The Haelors were ruthless, and General Haelor wouldn't give up so easily. If anything, this setback would only make him angrier and more dangerous. "Status report," Ryan barked, his voice cutting through the tension. "Shields at 20%. Ensign Jason Cole replied, his hand still gripping the helm controls tightly. "Engines are holding steady, but we're running low on power." "Life support?" Ryan asked, turning to Chief Engineer Lucas Ford. Lucas glanced at his console. "Still operational, but barely. We've diverted too much energy to the anomaly pulse. If we don't stabilize soon, we'll start losing critical systems." Ryan nodded grimly. The pulse had bought them time, but it had come at a cost. The horizon was hanging by a thread, and they couldn't afford another direct hit. He turned to Lieutenant Elena Vega, who was already back at her station, analyzing the Haelor fleet's condition. "What about them?" he asked. Elena studied her screen carefully. "Most of their ships are still recovering. Weapons and propulsion systems are offline for now, but it won't last long. I estimate 10 minutes before they regain full functionality." 10 minutes. That wasn't much, but it was enough, if they used it wisely. Ryan's mind raced as he weighed their options. They could try to escape, slipping away while the Haelors were still vulnerable. But with their engines damaged and shields nearly gone, they wouldn't get far. No, they needed to press their advantage while they still had one. "We need to disable as many of their ships as possible," Ryan said finally. "If we can cripple their fleet, they'll be forced to retreat." Elena frowned. "How? We barely have enough power to keep ourselves alive, let alone launch an attack." Ryan turned to Lucas. "Can we amplify the anomaly's pulses again?" Lucas shook his head, not without risking a complete overload. "One more surge like that, and we'll lose everything." Ryan clenched his jaw. There had to be another way. Then an idea struck him, one that was risky, but might just work. "Jason," he said, stepping closer to the helm, "can you plot a course to bring us within range of their flagship?" Jason's eyes widened. "Their flagship? Sir, that thing's massive. We'd be swarmed." "I know," Ryan admitted. "But if we can take out General Haelor's command ship, the rest of the fleet will fall into disarray. It's our best shot." Elena leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "If we time it right, we might be able to use the anomaly's residual energy to disrupt their systems again. But we'd need to get dangerously close." Ryan didn't hesitate. "Do it. Lucas, prepare the engines for another burst. Elena, monitor the anomaly's energy levels. Jason, get us in position." The crew sprang into action, each member focused on their task. Jason plotted a daring course that brought the horizon dangerously close to the Haelor flagship, weaving between the larger ships to avoid detection. Meanwhile, Elena worked tirelessly to align the ship's systems with the anomaly's energy signature, ensuring they could trigger another pulse at the right moment. As they approached the flagship, alarms began blaring across the bridge. The Haelors were regaining control of their weapon systems, and it wouldn't be long before they realized what the humans were planning. "Hold steady," Ryan ordered, his voice calm but firm. "We only get one shot at this." Finally, the horizon reached its target. Elena triggered the anomaly's energy, sending another pulse rippling outward. This time, it struck the flagship directly, causing its systems to collapse. Lights dimmed, weapons went offline, and the massive ship drifted helplessly in space. On the bridge, the crew erupted into cheers. They had done it. They had struck a crippling blow to the Haelor fleet. But Ryan remained focused. "Jason, get us out of here," he ordered. "Full throttle." As the horizon sped away, the Haelor fleet scrambled to regroup. General Haelor roared in frustration, his pride wounded as much as his forces. For the first time, he realized that underestimating humanity had been a grave mistake. And deep in the void, the shimmering anomaly pulsed faintly, its secrets still waiting to be uncovered. The SS Horizon raced through the void, its battered frame groaning under the strain of full-throttle speed. Behind them, the Haelor fleet was in chaos. Their flagship, once a symbol of their dominance, now drifted powerless in space. Alarms blared across the alien ships as they scrambled to recover from the second devastating pulse of energy. For the first time, General Haelor's cold confidence faltered. He stared at the view screen, his sharp eyes narrowing as he watched the tiny human vessel slip away. "They're retreating," one of his officers reported, his voice trembling with unease. "Their engines are damaged, but they're moving fast." Haelor growled, his scaled hands clenching into fists. "Retreating? No, they're regrouping." His voice dripped with venom. "They've proven themselves clever, but they won't escape. Pursue them." On the bridge of the horizon, Captain Ryan Carter didn't need to see the Haelors to know they were coming. The faint hum of their engines echoed through space, growing louder with each passing second. Despite their victory over the flagship, the humans weren't out of danger yet. The Haelors still outnumbered them, and their weapons would be back online soon. "Jason, keep us steady," Ryan ordered, his tone calm but firm. "Elena, how much time do we have before they can fire again?" Elena glanced at her console, her fingers flying over the keys. "Their systems are still recovering. I'd say 5 minutes, maybe less if they prioritize weapons." Ryan nodded. 5 minutes wasn't enough. The horizon couldn't outrun the Haelors, and their shields were nearly gone. If they took another hit, it would be catastrophic. But Ryan refused to give up. There had to be a way to turn this situation to their advantage. "Lucas," he said, turning to Chief Engineer Lucas Ford, "what's left of our power reserves?" Lucas wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked the readings. "Not much, sir. Barely enough to keep life support running. If we push the engines any harder, we'll burn out completely." Ryan clenched his jaw. Sacrifices would have to be made. Divert everything we've got left to the engines. Shut down non-essential systems, even life support if you have to. We need speed. Grace Bennett, the ship's medical officer, stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "Captain, shutting down life support could kill us faster than the Haelors." "I know," Ryan admitted, meeting her gaze. "But if we don't move now, we're dead anyway. Trust me, Grace. We'll make it." Grace hesitated, then nodded. She trusted Ryan, even when his decisions seemed impossible. Turning to the crew, she began issuing instructions to prepare for the loss of oxygen and gravity. Everyone moved quickly, securing themselves and conserving what little air they had left. As Lucas rerouted power, the lights on the bridge dimmed further, leaving the room bathed in shadow. The hum of the engines grew louder, vibrating through the floor beneath their feet. Jason pushed the throttle to its limit, coaxing every ounce of speed from the damaged vessel. The horizon surged forward, leaving the Haelors behind, but not by much. "They're gaining on us," Jason shouted, his voice tense. 2 minutes until they're in range. Ryan's mind raced. They needed something, a distraction, a trap, anything to buy them more time. Then Elena spoke up, her voice cutting through the tension. "Sir," she said, her eyes bright with an idea, "what if we use the anomaly again? Not to disable them, but to mask our escape." Ryan frowned. "Mask our escape?" "Yes," Elena explained. "If we trigger another pulse, it could create enough interference to hide us. The Haelors won't be able to track us through the distortion." Ryan hesitated. Triggering another pulse was risky. They had already pushed the anomaly to its limits, and there was no guarantee it wouldn't collapse, or worse, explode. But they had no other options. "Do it," he said finally. Elena, get ready to trigger the pulse. Jason, position us as close to the anomaly as possible. The crew worked together seamlessly, each member focused on their task. As the horizon approached the shimmering distortion, Elena prepared the final sequence of commands. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was it, their last chance. "Ready," she said, glancing at Ryan. Ryan took a deep breath. Now, the SS Horizon floated silently within the protective embrace of the anomaly's energy field. For now, the crew was safe from the Haelors. But the reprieve came at a cost. The ship's systems were failing one by one, and the air inside was growing thin. Without life support, every breath felt heavier than the last. On the bridge, the dim red emergency lights cast long shadows across the faces of the crew, highlighting their exhaustion and fear. Captain Ryan Carter leaned against the railing, his arms crossed as he stared at the view screen. The anomaly's shimmering distortion obscured everything beyond it, making it impossible to see if the Haelors were still searching for them. But Ryan knew better than to hope they had given up. General Haelor wasn't the kind to walk away from a fight, not when his pride was on the line. "We can't stay here forever," Ryan said finally, breaking the heavy silence. "Lucas, how long until we can restore basic systems?" Chief Engineer Lucas Ford glanced up from his console, his face pale with fatigue. "I'm working as fast as I can, sir. Life support is our top priority, but it'll take time. Too much time, honestly. If we don't get oxygen flowing soon." He trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Ryan nodded grimly. He didn't need Lucas to spell it out. They were running out of air, and without a miracle, the crew wouldn't survive another hour. But miracles were in short supply out here. "Elena," Ryan said, turning to Lieutenant Elena Vega, who was hunched over her station, typing furiously. "Can you use the anomaly to mask us while we move? Maybe buy us enough distance to slip away." Elena hesitated, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I can try," she admitted, "but the anomaly's energy is unstable. If we trigger another pulse, it could collapse, or worse, drag us into whatever's at its center." Ryan clenched his jaw. Every option carried risks, but doing nothing meant certain death. "Do what you can," he ordered. "Jason, prepare the engines for a jump. We'll make our move as soon as life support comes back online." Jason Cole nodded, though his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the controls. The young ensign had been through more in the past few hours than most people experienced in a lifetime. Despite his fear, he refused to give up. None of them would. Medical Officer Grace Bennett moved quietly among the crew, checking on each member and offering words of encouragement. She stopped beside Petty Officer Kevin Myers, who was slumped against a wall, struggling to breathe. His face was pale, and beads of sweat dotted his forehead. "Kevin," Grace said softly, kneeling beside him, "how are you holding up?" Kevin managed a weak smile. "Just peachy, Doc," he rasped. "Never been better." Grace forced a smile, though her heart ached. Kevin was one of the toughest members of the crew, but even he couldn't fight the lack of oxygen forever. She pressed an oxygen mask into his hand. "Keep this on. You're going to be okay." As Grace stood, Kevin grabbed her wrist weakly. "Doc," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "If something happens, tell my sister I love her." Grace swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "You're going to tell her yourself," she said firmly. "We're getting out of this." Back at her station, Elena worked feverishly to stabilize the anomaly's energy. Her fingers flew over the keys, rerouting power and recalibrating systems. Finally, she let out a small gasp. "I think I've got it," she said, her voice tinged with both relief and uncertainty. "One more pulse should mask us long enough to escape, but it'll drain what little power we have left." Ryan didn't hesitate. "Do it." Elena nodded and triggered the sequence. The anomaly pulsed once more, sending waves of energy rippling outward. The distortion grew thicker, enveloping the horizon completely. Outside, the Haelor fleet scanned the area, their sensors blinded by the interference. "Now!" Ryan shouted. Jason pushed the throttle forward, and the horizon surged ahead, slipping through the chaos like a ghost. Behind them, the anomaly began to destabilize, its shimmering light flickering erratically. Sparks flew from consoles across the bridge as the ship's systems struggled to cope with the strain. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Structural integrity is failing." Lucas yelled, "We're losing hull plating." Ryan turned to Grace. "Get everyone strapped in. This is going to get rough." Grace nodded and hurried to secure the crew. Moments later, the horizon broke free of the anomaly, emerging into open space. The Haelors were nowhere to be seen. Either they had given up or lost track of the humans entirely. But the victory came at a price. As the ship limped away, Kevin slumped unconscious in his seat, the oxygen mask slipping from his face. Grace rushed to his side, pressing her fingers to his neck. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, faintly, she felt a pulse. "He's alive," she said, her voice trembling with relief. "Barely." Ryan exhaled sharply, leaning heavily against the railing. They had survived, for now. But as he gazed at the battered faces of his crew, he knew the cost of their escape would weigh on them all. The SS Horizon drifted through the void, its battered hull groaning under the strain of survival. The crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship from falling apart, their movements slow and deliberate as they conserved what little energy remained. On the bridge, Captain Ryan Carter stood by the main console, his face etched with exhaustion, but his resolve unshaken. They had escaped the Haelors, for now. But the price of that escape was written in the weary eyes of his crew and the faint beeping of medical equipment monitoring Petty Officer Kevin Myers. Grace Bennett hovered over Kevin, her hand steadied despite the toll the past hours had taken on her. His breathing was shallow, and his pulse remained weak, but he was alive. For Grace, that was enough to keep going. She adjusted the oxygen mask covering his face and whispered words of encouragement, though she wasn't sure if he could hear her. "Hang in there, Kevin," she murmured softly. "We're safe for now." Nearby, Elena Vega sat at her station, staring intently at the anomaly's readings. Even after escaping its grasp, it continued to pulse faintly in the distance, a shimmering reminder of the power humanity had barely begun to understand. Her mind raced with questions. What was it? Who, or what, had created it? And why did it respond so strongly to human intervention? "Elena," Ryan said, stepping closer to her console. "What do we know about that thing?" Elena looked up, her dark eyes reflecting both curiosity and caution. "It's not natural," she admitted. "The energy patterns are too precise. This isn't just some random phenomenon. It's artificial. Someone built this." Ryan frowned. "Built it for what? Defense? Communication?" "I don't think so," Elena replied. "From what I've seen, it's more like a weapon. A failsafe, maybe. Designed to protect against invaders like the Haelors." Ryan crossed his arms, his gaze drifting toward the view screen where the anomaly still flickered faintly. If Elena was right, then humanity had stumbled onto something far greater than anyone could have imagined. But with great discoveries came great responsibility and danger. "We can't leave it behind," Ryan said finally. "If the Haelors find out what it is, they'll use it against us, or worse, destroy it." Elena nodded. "Agreed. But studying it further means risking our lives again. We're already running on fumes." Ryan glanced around the bridge. The crew was battered but determined, their spirits refusing to break despite everything they'd endured. He knew they wouldn't abandon this discovery, not when it might hold the key to humanity's survival. "Lucas," Ryan called out, turning to Chief Engineer Lucas Ford, who was busy patching up damaged systems. "How much longer until we're operational?" Lucas wiped sweat from his brow and sighed. "Another hour, maybe two. Enough to limp to a nearby outpost, but not much else." "That'll have to do," Ryan decided. "We'll head for the nearest safe zone, regroup, and come back for the anomaly. Whatever it is, it belongs to us now." The crew exchanged glances, a mix of hope and unease passing between them. Returning to the anomaly meant facing the Haelors again, and none of them were eager to repeat the horrors of the past battle. But deep down, they understood the importance of what they had found. Humanity couldn't afford to let such a powerful tool fall into enemy hands. As the horizon limped toward safety, General Haelor sat brooding on the bridge of his flagship. The humans had slipped through his grasp, leaving him humiliated and furious. His officers scurried around him, trying to piece together how the tiny vessel had evaded an entire fleet. But Haelor cared little for explanations. All he wanted was revenge. "They used the anomaly against us," one of his lieutenants ventured cautiously. "Somehow, they harnessed its power." Haelor's cold eyes narrowed. "Then we will harness it too. Find it. Destroy it if you must. But bring me answers." The lieutenant hesitated. "Sir, the anomaly's energy is unstable. Approaching it could be dangerous." Haelor sneered. "Danger is irrelevant. The humans survived it. So will we." Far away, aboard the horizon, Ryan stared out at the stars. The anomaly's shimmering light faded into the distance, but its presence lingered in his thoughts. Humanity had proven itself resilient, clever, and resourceful today, but the fight was far from over. Somewhere out there, the Haelor Empire plotted their next move, and when they struck again, Ryan knew the stakes would be higher than ever. For now, though, the crew had earned a moment of rest. As the ship trudged forward, battered but alive, Ryan allowed himself a small smile. Against all odds, they had survived. And as long as they kept fighting, humanity would endure. The SS Horizon finally reached the safety of a human outpost, a small but fortified station nestled near the edge of explored space. Its arrival was met with both relief and disbelief. The crew staggered off the battered ship, their faces pale and weary but alive. News of their encounter with the Haelor Empire spread quickly among the outpost's personnel, who had only heard rumors of the alien fleet's ruthlessness. To see the survivors of such an attack walk through their doors was nothing short of miraculous. Captain Ryan Carter stood at the center of the commotion, his voice steady as he gave a brief report to the outpost commander. "We engaged the Haelors," he explained, choosing his words carefully. "They underestimated us, and we used that to our advantage. But they'll be back." The commander, a grizzled man named Commander Harris, listened intently. His eyes flicked over the damaged ship and the exhausted crew before settling on Ryan. "You're lucky to be alive," he said bluntly. "But you've done more than survive. You've struck a blow against them. That's no small feat." Ryan nodded, though his expression remained grim. Luck had played a part, yes, but it was the crew's ingenuity and sacrifice that had saved them. He glanced over his shoulder at Elena Vega, who was already setting up equipment to analyze data from the anomaly. Her hands moved quickly, her focus unbroken even in the midst of chaos. Beside her, Grace Bennett tended to Kevin Myers, who had been stabilized but remained unconscious. The young petty officer's survival was a testament to Grace's skill and sheer determination. "Tell me about this anomaly," Harris said, following Ryan's gaze. "Your report mentions something unusual." "It's not just unusual," Ryan replied. "It's artificial. Someone built it, probably as a defense mechanism. It disrupted the Haelor systems and gave us a fighting chance." Harris raised an eyebrow. "And you left it behind?" "We didn't have a choice," Ryan admitted. "Our ship can barely stay together as it is. But we're going back for it. We can't let the Haelors get their hands on it." Harris studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I'll assign you a repair team and supply ship. You'll need reinforcements if you're planning to go toe-to-toe with those bastards again." Ryan accepted the offer with gratitude, but knew the real challenge lay ahead. Fixing the horizon would take time, and every second they delayed increased the risk of the Haelors finding the anomaly first. Still, they couldn't rush into another confrontation without being prepared. Meanwhile, Alina worked tirelessly to decode the data she'd collected during their encounter. She pored over the readings, her mind racing with possibilities. The anomaly wasn't just a weapon. It was intelligent, or at least designed by someone who understood energy manipulation on a level humanity hadn't yet achieved. As she delved deeper, she discovered fragments of code embedded within the pulses, almost like a language. "This isn't just a failsafe," she muttered to herself. "It's a message." Lucas Ford joined her, leaning over her shoulder to look at the screen. "A message? From who?" "I don't know," Alina admitted. "But whoever built this wanted to leave something behind. Maybe instructions, maybe a warning." Lucas frowned. "Either way, we'd better figure it out before the Haelors do." Back on the bridge of his flagship, General Haelor seethed with frustration. His forces had scored the area where the humans had escaped, but the anomaly had vanished, its energy signature completely gone. For the first time in his long career, he felt uncertainty creeping into his thoughts. The humans had proven themselves resourceful, using tools and tactics he hadn't anticipated. And now, they were hiding somewhere, licking their wounds and plotting their next move. "Find them," Haelor growled, addressing his officers. "Track their movements, intercept their communications. I want to know where they're going and what they're planning." One of his lieutenants hesitated. "Sir, if they return to the anomaly." "They won't," Haelor snapped, "because we'll find it first. And when we do, we'll destroy it, or use it to crush them." Far away, aboard the horizon, the crew gathered in the mess hall for a rare moment of rest. Despite their exhaustion, there was a quiet pride in the air. They had faced overwhelming odds and lived to tell the tale. As Ryan looked around the room, he felt a spark of hope. Humanity might be outnumbered and outgunned, but it had something the Haelors didn't: resilience. And as long as they kept fighting, they would never truly lose. The battle wasn't over, but for now, they had won. The repairs to the SS Horizon were finally complete, and the ship stood ready for its next mission. Its battered hull had been patched up, its engines rebuilt, and its systems upgraded with help from the outpost's engineers. The crew moved about the ship with a renewed sense of purpose, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that they weren't alone in this fight. Reinforcements had arrived. A small escort vessel equipped with weapons and supplies, and the combined fleet now felt like a force capable of standing up to the Haelors. Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, his eyes scanning the monitors as final checks were made. He turned to his crew, his voice steady but filled with quiet pride. "We've come a long way since we first encountered the anomaly," he began. "We didn't ask for this fight, but we stepped up when it mattered. Now we're going back, not just to protect ourselves, but to ensure humanity has a future." Lieutenant Alina Vega nodded, her hands resting on her console. She had spent every spare moment analyzing the data from the anomaly, piecing together fragments of its code. Though much of it remained a mystery, one thing was clear: the anomaly wasn't just a weapon, it was a warning. Whoever had built it wanted to protect something important, and Alina was determined to uncover what that was. "We'll need to be careful," she said, glancing at Ryan. "If the Haelors find out what the anomaly truly is, they'll stop at nothing to control it." Ryan agreed. "Then we'll make sure they don't get the chance." As the Horizon prepared to depart, Medical Officer Grace Bennett visited Kevin Myers one last time. His condition had improved, though he was still weak and confined to the outpost's medical bay. Grace smiled softly as she adjusted his blankets. "You did good, Kevin," she said. "Now it's our turn to finish the job." Kevin managed a faint smile. "Kick their tails for me, Doc." Grace chuckled. "Count on it." With the crew assembled and the ship prepped, the Horizon launched into space, the escort vessel trailing close behind. Their destination was the anomaly, but this time, they weren't running. They were taking the fight to the enemy. As they approached the shimmering distortion, Alina monitored its energy levels closely. To her relief, it was stable, waiting silently as if aware of their return. "Captain," she said, her voice tinged with awe, I think I've cracked part of the code. It's a map. Ryan frowned. A map? To where? Elena hesitated. Somewhere beyond the anomaly. Somewhere the builders thought was worth protecting. Before Ryan could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The sensors detected movement. Multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. The Haelor fleet had found them. "Here we go again," Ensign Jason Cole muttered, gripping the helm controls tightly. Ryan's expression hardened. "Elena, activate the anomaly. Lucas, prepare the escort vessel for combat. Jason, keep us steady." The crews sprang into action, their movements precise and practiced. Elena triggered the anomaly's pulse, sending waves of energy rippling outward. The Haelor ships faltered, their systems disrupted once more. But this time, the humans were ready. The escort vessel opened fire, targeting the Haelor's lead ships while the Horizon positioned itself near the anomaly. General Haelor roared in frustration as his fleet struggled to regain control. "Destroy them," he bellowed. Now. But the humans were no longer the underdogs they had been before. With the anomaly's power and their newfound strength, they fought back fiercely. Plasma bolts streaked through space, lighting up the void in flashes of red and blue. Slowly but surely, the tide turned in humanity's favor. As the battle raged, Ryan turned to Elena. "Can you open the pathway?" She hesitated, then nodded. "It's risky, but I can try." With trembling hands, she entered the final sequence. The anomaly pulsed brightly, its shimmering surface splitting open to reveal a glowing portal. Beyond it lay a vast expanse of stars unlike anything they had ever seen. "Go," Ryan ordered. "We'll hold them off." One by one, the human ships passed through the portal, leaving the Haelors behind. As the Horizon entered the unknown, Ryan glanced back at the anomaly, now closing behind them. They had escaped, but their journey was far from over. In the distance, General Haelor stared at the collapsing anomaly, his face twisted with rage. "They won't escape us forever," he vowed. But aboard the Horizon, hope burned brighter than ever. Humanity had proven it could stand against even the greatest odds, and as they ventured into the uncharted reaches of space, they carried with them the promise of a brighter future.